Hello and welcome back to my channel. In this video, I'm actually going to create an Envelobox for this card. If you caught my earlier showcase or tutorial video where I made these pop-up boxes using Papercraft Society box number 15, the one that was designed by Linda Parker, I mentioned, I think, in one of the videos that I was going to measure the size of the box so that I could leave it in the description box below that video. But as it turns out, all of my boxes all of my pop-up box cards are just a little bit different in size. And in part, that's because the backing plate here, this is a piece that you do have to cut yourself because there isn't a die that's in the set that will cut this. There is a die that will cut like a gorgeous scalloped edge if you want to have a scalloped edge on at the top of your box. But otherwise, you can really decide for yourself how tall of a box card you want. So to give you an idea, I already made boxes for the other 4 cards that I made in that series, and they're all lined up at the bottom here. But look at that. They're all like different heights. Partly that's because some of them have the scalloped border at the top, some of them don't. Some of them I have the flowers just kind of popping out beyond the top of the backing card here. So there's just a lot of variability, and the width of this is the same because there is a die that will cut the box, the base of the box here. But in terms of the height, they're all a little different. So I'm going to show you how I made these boxes by actually making the specific one that's going to go for this. So this is a technique that you could really use for making envelopes too, because the only difference between an envelope and an Envelobox is that the Envelobox has a little bit of a gusset here, and that's what's going to preserve sort of all of that dimension that we have on our card. I'm not shipping those cards like that. They're actually getting mailed out with gifts, and so it's going to be in a larger box that's going to protect it during shipping. So I am using 100-pound cover cardstock, but I don't need it to be so structured as to, hold up during as it goes through the shipping process. So for these boxes, all of them have the same width, and that is roughly 6 1/4 inch. And what I like to do whenever I make any envelope is add an additional 1/4 inch to both the width and the height. That way you just have a little bit, it's easier to pull the card in and out. It's not a super tight fit, and it gives you just that little bit of wiggle room, especially as, when you fold paper, you do lose a little bit. And so I find adding that 1/4 inch just, helps all around. So because this is a standard US A2 size card, it's already 8 1/2 wide, and as I mentioned, the card itself is 6 1/4. So what I want is 6 1/2 in terms of the final dimension of my Envelobox. So with the 8 1/2 going across the top, what I'm going to do is just score 1 inch on each side. So that gives me 6 1/2 in the center, and that's going to be the final dimension of my card. But because I do want an Envelobox and I want a little bit of a gusset, I'm not only going to score at the 1 inch, I'm actually going to score at 5/8 inch. So I'm going from the 1 inch line, I'm going towards the outer edge of my paper by 3/8 of an inch, and that's going to give me a 3/8 inch gusset. You can go more, I wouldn't go less, especially on my cards. I did do one that was just 1/4 of an inch, and it really smushed things down a lot. I mean, I got the card in there, and it's okay, but I think 3/8 works better. Even half might have been okay too, but I think 3/8 I think will be just fine. So I'm going to flip my paper over. I still have 8.5 going across the top, but now I'm on the other side, and I'm going to do the exact same thing. I'm going to score at 1 inch, and then 5/8 of an inch for my gusset. So you can determine, you know, however much of a gusset you're going to need for your card and adjust this accordingly. I'm gonna make some pencil marks just to label things. So the next thing that we want to do is measure the height of our box. So I'm gonna start from the very bottom, and I'm not going to the top of my backing plate here. I'm going I have to go see. This is a prime example of where I attached a flower and it goes above the back plate here. So I need to measure from the bottom of my box to whatever is going to be the tallest thing. And in this case, it's coming in at 6 inches. So what I want is to score a line that's 6 1/4, because remember, I like to add 1/4 of an inch to both the width and the height of whatever it is I want to fit into my box. And so I'm going to I want to score this at 6 1/4. However, on the We Are Memory Keepers, the Works tool, the score line ends here. So the furthest out you can score is actually 6 1/8, and I need 6 1/4. But that's no problem, because what I can do is just score from the opposite side. It involves doing a little bit of math though. So I know that this paper is going to start at 11 inches wide. And if I want, I basically want 6 1/4, but from this end. And so you can either count it out or do the math, right? So if I, either way, you're going to end up at 4 3/4. So I'll go ahead and put a line there. So basically what I have now is on this side here, I've got 6 1/4 height-wise, and then 6 1/2 width. That's going to be the entire outside dimension of my Envelobox. So from this 4 3/4 line that we just scored, I need to make a score line that is going to allow me to fold that gusset. Remember, I'm using a 3/8 inch gusset, so I'm just going to go 3/8 of an inch towards the outside of my paper and give myself another score line there. So I know it's a little bit hard to see all the score lines, but basically you'll have 2 score lines going down one side, 2 score lines going down the other side, and then perpendicular to that you'll have 2 score lines going down the middle of the paper. Now let me go ahead and kind of label this a little bit just so that it becomes a little bit more clear. So this is going to be the back of our envelope. Well, really, I guess if we're doing this in the reverse, that's technically the front of our envelope. Sorry. So the full piece is the front of our envelope. Let me bring in a finished one just so that you can see. So that's going to be this right here. So that'll be the front of our envelope. The back of our envelope has, it doesn't go all the way up to the top. So that's going to be this side here, which is a little bit it's not going to be as tall. So it's a little bit shorter than the front of our envelope. That's important because we're going to make some cuts now, but we're going to cut it from the shorter portion of our card stock here. So we're going to cut it from the back. Now, let me draw some lines in a pen so that you can just see it a little bit better. So we do have a couple lines going down on this side, right? So you want to cut, this is the first line, and here's the second line. So we want to cut from the second line, and you want to cut all the way down. If we look at the score lines that intersect that, there are two. So my first cut, I want to cut all the way from this line here all the way down to this line here. So this was the line that's our 1-inch score line, and we're gonna trim off all the way, make a cut all the way down to the second line that it intersects with. So I can do that on my scoreboard here. So all I need to do is just line up my score line with the 0 line on my trimmer, and I'm gonna run this all the way down. On the blade itself, on the plastic casing for it, there's actually a line that goes right down the edge here, and it shows you where your blade is. So I'm gonna line up that line with the second score line that intersects with the line that I'm cutting down, and then I can lift up. So there we go. Now I'm gonna do the same thing on the other side. So not the 5/8 inch line that we scored, but on the 1-inch line, I'm going to cut along there, and I'm going to stop when it intersects with the second score line. And I am actually going to cut that from the bottom up, just because I don't want to flip my paper over. My cuts tend to look a little bit nicer on this side, so that'll keep a nice clean edge. So there you can see there's that first score line it intersects with, and there is the second one, and we cut all the way to that second one. Okay, so now we need to cut some portions of this off. So I'm going to put my paper, now I'm along the 11-inch side of my paper. I just turned it a quarter of a turn. And now we need to make a couple more cuts. So I'm going to cut, if I'm working from, this is the short edge piece. So if I'm looking at my right hand side here, the first score line, I'm just going to cut that off completely. So that's going to go away. And so we'll cut that off. And then I'm going to make another cut starting at the top here, but stopping at the first score line. So I don't want to cut that off completely. I do want to stop. So we're gonna, this piece will eventually get rid of. Okay, so I'm gonna make this first cut here. So I'm just gonna line this up so that my, again, that score line is right in line with the 0 line, basically the track where my blade is going to go. And then I'm gonna run my blade all the way until it hits the second score line, and I'm able to just take that away. So I'm gonna hold this here still, slide my blade all the way down to the bottom, and from beyond the paper, I'm going to cut upwards and remove the piece on the opposite side. So now we have something that looks like this. Okay, So we still have to make this last cut here. And again, I'm going to line that score line up with where my cutting track is. But I'm going to drag this down and cut until it hits the first score line. So this isn't going to fall away. It's still attached. Bringing my blade all the way down beyond the length of my paper, I'm going to cut pushing upwards. And again, I'm going to stop when it hits the first score line. Okay, so now we have, I think we are all done with our trimmer for now. And now I'm going to make some cuts by hand. So if we look at this piece here, where I have the X, I want to cut that away completely. So how I'm going to do that is, and you can see I've got just this little flap here. So what I'm going to do is I'm actually going to just cut a little bit of a V on this from this little square piece, and I'm going to notch out a little bit of a miter cut on the opposite end too, because I just want to remove a little bit of cardstock where all of these are going to fold into each other, and that just helps them, it just helps remove some bulk from those corners. And I'm going to notch out a little bit, miter this corner a little bit too. So go ahead and just a really slight, you don't have to take off much because these are not that long. So I'll do the same on this side. So we've got that little notch hanging out there. So I'm just going to miter that tab a little bit. And then I'm going to do a little bit of a miter cut on this side. And that piece will fall away. And then I'm going to miter this tab a little bit right into the corner. So now you have something that looks like that. Alright, so that's the beginning of our Envelobox. Now we can go ahead and fold just a mountain fold on all of the score lines. So fold that. Fold that. These little tabs can fold in, and then we can fold our sides in. Okay, so before I actually close this up, I am going to erase where I wrote front and back. It's the inside of the box, but still, somebody might see it if they looked closely. Okay, oh, I haven't folded this, so let's fold this. And we'll fold that. Alright, so now if you want, I kind of like the look of rounding these corners because you'll see that. So I'll use my corner chomper here, and I'm going to do a 1/2 inch corner. So okay, all right, and now I'm going to place some double-sided adhesive tape. Our box is going to close up just like this. So see those two little small tabs? You just want to fold those up, and then you want to fold these in. And because we mitered those corners ever so slightly, everything is going to fit really nicely down in those corners. You're not going to have a bunch of cardstock that's folded in on itself and bulking up that. So you'll be able to get this to be a really nice, finished corners here. But I do want to place down some double-sided adhesive tape. And so on the shorter side here, because see how it doesn't go all the way up to the top. So we want to put our adhesive on the shorter side. And I'm just going to run a line as close to the outer edge as I can, and all the way from the bottom all the way up to the top. You could use a liquid adhesive too, if you want. I don't think this needs to be all that sturdy, and I don't think anyone's gonna keep it forever and ever, so I think it's okay to just use your standard double-sided adhesive tape. Alright, so I'll go ahead and attach this down. So fold that little tab in. This isn't gonna get glued to anything, by the way. It's just there so that everything is nice and sealed and you don't, see anything in there, and whatever you put in here, nothing will slip out. So I'm gonna fold the side in and the bottom up, and I'm just gonna use my fingers to kind of push this corner and feel for where it starts to get flush with the bottom, and same with up here. Just gonna feel for it and just making sure that it's nice and flush. And we do want to burnish, so I'm just going, it's a little bit tough to get your bone folder in there, but you can just pry it open a little bit like this and give it a good burnish. And then on the other side I'll do the same thing. So go ahead and peel off the paper liner. On the side here, just tuck that tab in and tuck all of this in. And then just want to feel for this corner, make sure that it's nice and flush. Make sure that the top is nice and flush along this side, this edge. And then again, just gonna stick my bone folder in there and burnish it as well as I can. It's a little bit tough to get in there, but you can do it. So there's one portion of our Envelobox, and if we did all of our measurements correctly, then your card should fit in here. Like that. So now we need a flap to actually close it. So you do need a second piece, and I have one piece that's left over from a previous flap that I made. So this piece, in terms of the width of it, matches the width of our Envelobox, which is 6.5. And all we need to do is score some lines. So we want to score one line that's going to be the glue tab that attaches it to the Envelobox. We need to score a second line for the gusset, and that's pretty much it. So I'm going to bring my scoreboard back in. I'm going to flip this over so that it's ready for scoring, because then I can butt my paper up against here. So as I mentioned, this is already 6.5 wide, and so I just want to turn it so that I'm working with this orientation here. And I want to score, I'll do 5/8 of an inch glue tab. Probably more than I need, but I just want to make sure this stays on there. And then I'm making 3/8 of an inch gussets. So my next score line will be 3/8 of an inch from my last score line that I just scored, and so that's going to put me at 1 inch. And I'm going to just play it by ear and see. So now here's where you can really kind of customize a little bit and make some adjustments. But I'm going to leave it like this. If it looks like it's hanging down too far down the box, then I'll just trim it. But for now, I'll leave it before I do anything else, I'm just going to, again, miter these corners. So I'm just mitering from the first score line, the one that we scored at 5/8. Just going to take a little triangle off, and I'll do the same thing on the other side. Again, this is just so that as this fits into the box, it doesn't bulk up any corners. You can get it to fit in there and then square up everything else really easily from there. And so I'll just fold and burnish my score lines. And here I will use a liquid glue just to really make sure this flap isn't gonna go anywhere once it's down. And so I like to just do thin little scratches of glue all the way across. You really don't need a lot, so these fine tip nozzles for glue bottles is really great for that, because you can get the glue exactly where you want it and not have too much. So I'm gonna take my card out so that it doesn't accidentally get glued down, and I'm gonna just flatten this a little bit so that I can really line it up. So what I'm looking to do is this is going to get attached to the inside, but what I'm going to do is I'm lining up the top of the bottom portion of my Envelobox with that first score line. So actually, I think it'll be easier if it's a little flat. So just line that up. And I'm just going to fold this down and make sure it's nice and flush from the back as well. Okay, I think that's pretty good. And give it a really good burnish. And when you are using those just thin little scratches of glue, it will dry faster, it'll get tacky faster, so you'll still have a little bit of wiggle room, but it is going to grab pretty quickly on you, especially if you use a really high quality PVA glue that doesn't have a high water content. I like to use the Lineco pH Neutral. It's a bookbinding glue, so that works pretty well. Actually, this leftover scrap is actually a really good dimension. I don't think I need to trim any off, because if you look, it will go past this top portion by probably about an inch, maybe even a little bit more than an inch, which is perfect. So it's just enough for me to put some adhesive, like double-sided adhesive tape, to seal this up, and I think it'll look great. So just as a finishing touch, I'm gonna round the corners on my flap, my closure. That'll just make it look a little bit more polished. And I think I have a little bit of my flap coming up here. Yep, that needs a little bit more glue. Although I think it would hold just fine, but let's just make sure it's nice and sealed. But that's basically our box complete. You could probably use a double-sided adhesive here instead of a liquid glue, but like I said, I definitely, this is actually a hinge that's kind of keeping all of our pieces together, so definitely want to make sure that it's not going anywhere. Alright, so that's how easy it is to create your own Envelobox, custom size to whatever it is that you need to fit into your box. And you don't need to have like a 12 by 12 sheet of paper in order to create these larger these larger boxes. I have some stray, so just be careful before you put anything in if you have some stray glue anywhere to use. These gum erasers are really nice. They'll just kind of rub out any adhesive that you might have. Okay, just feel around. That all feels good. Okay, so I'll just slide this in. And there you have it. So you can, this is the front. It's nice and it's all solid one piece. You can do your custom lettering or anything on there. And then on the back here, I'm just going to put a little bit of just a small strip of double-sided adhesive just to close this down, although I might actually close it with some washi on the outside too, just to make it a little bit pretty from the outside. But there you have it, a custom Envelobox for my 5 floral pop-up boxes that are all pretty much different sizes. But that's the beauty of being able to create your own boxes, because then you have the freedom to be as creative as you want with your cards, knowing that you're always going to be able to make an envelope or an Envelobox to fit that in. So hopefully you found this tutorial helpful, and if you did, please do consider liking, commenting, sharing, and subscribing to my channel. If you do hit that notification bell, you'll also get a notification every time I post a new video, so you'll be able to see what sort of crafty fun I'm up to. Until my next video, happy crafting and have a fantastic day. Thanks. Bye.